that was not a bad turn for the human player. Still no flying machine pieces on the board. And we've started to build up a military a little bit. Also starting to separate out the tripods. And maybe we can do some damage this turn. All right. We're up to the production phase. So we'll add up our production points. Again, it's going to be 4, 8, 14, 26, 34, 36, and 40. We had 2 left over, so we're at 42 production points. How am I going to divide these up here? Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a field gun in North Carolina. So I'm going to buy a field gun for 10 points, or 12 points rather, and put it in North Carolina here. Military units can only be placed in states with a factory symbol and only if the region is not destroyed. So that's 12 points. That puts us down to 30 points. I'm going to put an infantry counter in Michigan to replace the infantry counter we lost last turn in Wisconsin, hopefully replaced in Michigan there. So that brings us down to 20 points. And I think I'm going to put a field gun also in Michigan for another 12 points, as that will also allow me to start protecting the harbor there. So we were at 20. We're now down to 8 points. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start my research on the next Tesla tech. And this tech I'm going to research is called the Tesla coil. It's useful during battles. That can give you some free shots anywhere on the board. It costs 3 points to start the research for that, so that brings us down to 5. And then it also costs 3 points for a success check, a breakthrough, and it requires green this time, but it also requires 2 instead of just 1 like the EMP bomb did. So I will do a breakthrough check, bringing me down to 2 production points. Green. So I get the first of 2 breakthroughs. Place that on the card here. And so we're halfway to having Tesla coils. But I'm down to 2 production points, which means I'm basically done with the production. All right. So we move to the next phase, which is the battle phase. Now, the first thing to do is check for the battle event. And we do indeed have a battle event card. This battle event card is Swift Movements. During this phase, all blue tripods perform a move down action after their normal actions have returned. And we'll get a check to see that here in a few seconds when we go through our battle. Now, do we have a battle this turn? And are there blue tripods involved? Well, the answer is going to be yes to both. In fact, we have a tripod and human units here in Wisconsin, and we have a damaged tripod, remember, from the powder keg, and some human units in North Carolina, specifically guns. If it's just cavalry or infantry or refugees, there is no battle. There has to be guns involved, and there are in each. And we've actually got 2 separate places where we'll do a battle, and so let's set up and let's do a battle. And we'll start with North Carolina first, so just hold on a second while we set that up. All right, we're back to the main board. I've moved the North Carolina units with its 2 earthworks still remaining, and the units left over from the battle in Wisconsin back to the battle board. The human player does not get any victory points for winning a battle. The Martian can, in certain circumstances, get victory points during a battle. A human player cannot. There are no other areas where humans and Martians are in the same area. So that is the end of the battle phase, and we move on to the devastation phase. Now, let's take a look at where our tripods are. We've got a bunch down here in the southwest, but that area is destroyed. They do not roll on the devastation phase. We have the first wave counter here in Illinois, but that's also in a devastated region, or a destroyed region, so nothing to roll on the devastation phase. The only other tripod is the one at sea, which again also does not roll on the devastation phase part of the turn. So we have no devastation phase. We'll move on then to the human action phase. Should be noted also, the next event card is a battle event. And so we'll see the next battle phase, what happens there. All right, human action phase. What are we going to do? Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move these 4 refugees into Michigan, where our harbor is, and hopefully they can escape. We're going to take our 2 refugees here in Virginia. We'll move them into Ohio. Now, I'm taking a little bit of a risk. We've got 4 refugees in Michigan, 2 in Ohio. That's 6 refugees, but my counter only has 4 gears on it, which means at the end of the Martian phase, if none of those have escaped or gone away, I'm going to lose 2 refugees and they turn into Martian victory points. So hopefully in the escape phase coming up here in a moment, I can get at least 2, if not 4 of those refugees to safety. Now, am I going to move any military units? Well, I could move my units from Wisconsin down to Illinois and maybe engage that number 1 wave, but I don't really want to do that because 1 field gun, even with a battle plan that the cavalry may give, doesn't do anything is not going to have much luck against 5 tripods instead of just the 1 we faced last time. And so I maybe want to start building up military before moving it. So I'm not going to move either of the Wisconsin units. Looking at the units in Michigan, kind of the whole point they are there is to protect the harbor, so I'm not going to move those. However, I am going to try to roll for a powder keg with the infantry using one of its special actions. And again, green good, red not bad, yellow very bad. We get a green result, so that means we get a powder keg placed in Michigan, meaning the first time any tripod makes it to Michigan, there will be potentially damage done. So there we're there. Now, what to do about these units in North Carolina? I'm actually going to leave them there. These waves, all the waves generally try to make their way to Washington, D.C., because destroying Washington, D.C., making it a destroyed region, ends the game as a victory condition. So the Martians actually have 3 ways to win. They can destroy Washington, D.C., they can build the flying machine, or they can get to 10 on the Martian colonizing track, which is 100 victory points. And so all the movement from all the tripods actually can generally move into Washington, D.C. And so these ones down here are eventually going to move into this area. And so I'll leave those there as a first line of defense for Washington, D.C. But as with the infantry in Michigan, I'm going to roll for a powder keg in North Carolina. I get a yellow result. As we said before, that's bad. The infantry is destroyed. And so they come off the map. And that's it for the human action phase. I'm going to move on now to the escape phase. And here will be a little bit different than what we've seen already. In the escape phase, now that I do indeed have 4 refugees in a state with a harbor, I will roll a die for each of those 4 refugees. Even though there's only 2 counters, they represent 4 refugees, to see if that refugee makes it onto a freighter in the Great Lakes and therefore to safety. So we roll once for each. Kind of like with the powder keg, red and green results mean they flee, they get on a freighter. A yellow result means they stay behind. And we're going to roll that 4 times. And again, remember, because we are jam-packed solid there with more than refugees and what it can hold, it's kind of important that I get at least 2 of these refugees onto a freighter. So we'll roll 4 times. First roll is yellow. First refugee does not flee. Second roll, green. So we've got 1 refugee fleeing. Third roll, yellow, no fleeing. Fourth roll, green. So we've got 2 fleeing, 2 not fleeing. I'll put a 2 marker on the harbor. The good news is I now only have 4 refugees in the Michigan, Indiana, Ohio region, which means that's not too many to handle, which means I can leave all of them there without penalty. All right, now, those refugees are fleeing. That does not mean they are safe. Once they have boarded freighters, which they have, they need to make what's called a sea encounter. And that's, again, a die roll, 1 die roll per state, or per harbor in this case. A roll of green, those refugees escape. A roll of yellow, we will have a naval battle with 1 tripod. A roll of red will be a naval battle with 2 tripods. So we're really hoping for green here. So we go ahead and roll 1 roll. We get a yellow. We are going to have a naval battle with 1 tripod against those 2 refugees or 2 freighters. So let me go ahead and get that set up, and we'll be seeing a naval battle. Now, I've moved the pieces from the battle board back to North Carolina, and I've also moved the battle pieces from Wisconsin to the battle board. I'm placing the battle marker in Wisconsin to indicate that's where the battle is taking place. And now it's time to determine initiative for this battle. Now, unlike North Carolina, which did have an earthworks counter, and I just recalled if you have earthworks, you get up to 2 free earthworks in that region. Only 1 per gun, however. So initially that gun should have had 3 earthworks. After firing, it has 2 remaining. And so I put the marker as a 2 earthworks remaining with the gun in North Carolina. But Wisconsin doesn't have earthworks, or hills. So therefore, not only do I not get free earthworks, the initiative also goes to the Martians. And so I'll mark that as Mars initiative. And that means I also have to place my units, which is a siege gun, a field gun, and a cavalry, before I see where the blue tripod ends up. I'm going to put the siege gun right here. And again, the guns have to be on a artillery space. I'm going to put the field gun here. And I'm going to put the cavalry marker here. Now, like the infantry in the North Carolina battle, the cavalry also has a special action. And these are called battle planning, or cavalry planning, which can give the human player battle plans, which can give advantages during the battle. And you can buy those if you have enough production points, 5 for a random or 10 for a chosen specific. Or you can roll 1 time per cavalry and check the chart. All right, green is 1 random battle plan. And so I'm going to just pull from the random battle plan pool, and I pull out a surprise shot counter. Now, a surprise shot is you place this on a gun, and I have 2, and I can choose which I want. The first time this gun fires, roll 2 extra dice in the attack. And so I'm actually going to place that on the field gun, because the siege gun already rolls 2 dice instead of 1. The siege gun only rolls once. What that means is now both of my guns can theoretically destroy that tripod in 1 shot, because it takes 2 damage to defeat that tripod. Remember, the one in North Carolina had already been damaged through the powder keg. The one here in Wisconsin has not. The other thing I'm going to do is I am actually going to shuffle these battle cards. You shuffle these either immediately after each battle or immediately before the next battle. Even though it's the same turn, the cards get shuffled. And so I'm shuffling these up. And that's finished. And now we place our tripod, and blue, this time, the battle card says place blue in the B spot. And so we'll place him here. And we're now ready to go. Keep in mind also, the Swift Movements card is still in effect because it's still the same phase. That card, if necessary, goes for every phase. Martians go first. Blue moves down one and then fires. So we move down one and then it fires one shot, and it will always fire at the closest gun. Now the field gun is 3 hexes away. The siege gun is only 2 hexes away. So it will fire at the siege gun. The 2 hit values are the same as what we saw in the first battle. Green hits any adjacent hex, 1 hex away if you will. Yellow hits 2 hexes away. Red hits 3 hexes away. So it's firing at the siege gun, and it needs a yellow result in order to hit. And it only takes 1 hit to destroy a human unit. And as luck would have it, yellow. 2 hexes away, that siege gun is destroyed, and that's not good. So I remove the siege gun and continue on. Now, I can fire. Oh, also, at the end of their every turn, the blue moves down 1. I'm going to fire from my field gun to the tripod. Normally I get 1 die roll, but remember, because of my battle plan, surprise shot, I get to roll 2 extra dice. So it's going to be 3 total. And in each case, a yellow result is a hit. So we'll roll 2. I get a yellow and a green, so that's 1 hit. And then I have 1 more die to roll, and that's yellow. That's very good, because that means that tripod is also gone. Removed from the board. And we use the surprise shot, so that goes away. That's the end of the battle, because there is no other Martian units on the board. And so that's a very successful battle as well. We did lose the siege gun, but we did destroy the tripod. So I'm going to go ahead and put the units back on the main board, and we'll set up to continue the turn. Alright, we're now almost ready to go with the battle. We've moved the units to the battle board. We have not yet placed them where they go. There are 2 additional counters. The first counter is this counter right here. It is the counter for at war or at battle, and that places in the state, so I'll place that in North Carolina. And the other is the initiative counter, and I apologize for the glare here a little bit. The initiative counter is placed to indicate which unit gets to set up first. And if the state that the battle is happening in has a hills counter in it, then the human side has initiative. If it does not have that hills counter, then the Martians have initiative. In this case, there is indeed a hills marker in North Carolina, and so the humans will have the initiative. So we'll place that on the human side. And what that means is that the Martians actually have to place their units first. Here's how that works. You draw from the land battle deck the first card, and you turn it over and check the color of the tripod. In this case, it's blue, with the blue area here, and it's in section D. I'm not sure if you can see that. I'll bring this up here. So you put this in D. So we'll put the tripod in D. Now we can go ahead and set up our human units. Oh, by the way, that was destroyed. I forgot. Or damaged, rather. I'm going to put my See, the guns have to go in one of the marked artillery places. I'm going to put it right there. The infantry unit, I'm going to put it here, way out of the way. The other thing is this is an infantry special ability. The infantry doesn't attack tripods directly, but what it can do is build earthworks. Think of earthworks as defenses for guns. If a gun has an earthworks counter, it cannot be fired upon. And that's with a roll of the die, yellow. A yellow result on the earthworks is 2. So we get 2 earthworks that we can place on this gun, which means it's going to take a little extra effort by the Martians in order to destroy that gun. And that's good for us, the human player. The Martians always move first during a battle phase turn. And so we'll again go to the land battle card and turn it over, and we do exactly what it says. Now, the blue unit is already damaged, and a damaged unit cannot perform special actions. Focused detect, which is a way for the Martians to get rid of those earthwork counters, is a special action. The blue damaged tripod cannot perform special actions, so that does nothing. However, the swift movement battle card we have from before, it does mean that the tripod moves down 1 hex to there. Now, at this point, the Martian phase is done. A damaged unit only gets to perform 1 of a possible 2 actions on the individual card. So the Martians are done. It is now the human turn. Because I've got this 2 earthworks counter, I feel safe in firing. When I fire, it's a hit on green if the opposing unit, in this case the tripod, is 1 hex away. Yellow if it's 2 hexes away. Red if it's 3 hexes away. And it's not mix or match. It's got to match exactly with the distance. So shooting, and I only get 1 shot, shooting at that blue tripod, I need a yellow. And again, there's 2 out of the 6 total. It is yellow. So that's good news, because that means that's a hit. And because this tripod was already damaged, that means that tripod is now destroyed and taken off the board and put back into the pool. That is and the earthworks counter, every time you fire, gets moved down 1. That's the end of the battle, because there are no more forces for the Martians in this particular area. And so I'm going to go ahead and move those pieces back to North Carolina. The infantry, the field gun, and the earthworks counter, which will be there for the next battle in North Carolina, as long as that field gun does not move, will be available there for the next battle. So I'll move them back to North Carolina, and then I will set up the battle in Wisconsin. So hold on tight. We're ready to go now with turn number 2. The board's obviously in a little different state than what it was at the beginning of turn 1, but the production phase is our first phase. It's a battle event card. We'll look at that on the next phase. We have changed a little bit in that the number of gears on the board has changed due to Texas turning the devastation phase last time. So we're up to 4, 8, 14, 26, 34, 36, and 40 production points. Now we had 4 left over. We had 40, so we actually have more production points than we did last time. But that's only because we had 4 banked. So we're at 44 production points. I'm going to use 22 of those points to buy a siege gun. So we'll take 22 points, buy a siege gun. I'm going to put that gun in Michigan, initially to guard the harbor, and we'll go from there. So we're down to 22 points. I'm going to buy a cavalry for 10 points, and we're also going to place that in Michigan. So we're down to 12 points. with that 12 points? Not entirely sure. But I think I'm going to buy an infantry for 10. And I'm actually going to put this infantry in North Carolina and start to bring it across to engage these tripods down here. So we're left with 2 points. We'll leave it there. That's the end of the production phase. Bought a siege gun, a cavalry, and an infantry. Move down to the battle phase. Now, first thing is we check the battle event card. This battle event card says rapid tripod movement. Martians have initiative. Well, that's something that would mean something if we were having a battle this turn, but we're not. So that card doesn't have any effect this turn. The next card that was turned up will be a human action event. You'll see that down here in a couple of minutes. Since there are no human units in the same state as a tripod, we'll move on to the next phase, which is the devastation phase. Now, here's where one of the special rules comes into play. If the region is already destroyed, you do not roll for devastation. So we actually have no tripods in any regions with a chance to roll on the devastation table. These tripods down here in the at sea area also do not roll on the devastation table. So actually, there's nothing that happens in the devastation phase on this turn. And so we go on to the next turn, which is the human action phase. And we now have a human action event card. And so we'll turn this over. Mass production. Save this card. You may buy 3 field guns for 30 production points. Normally a field gun is 12 production points. So 3 of them normally would cost 36 production points. But this card, during the next production phase or in a future production phase, will get a discount of 20%. The next phase turned up, or the next card turned up, will be an escape event, which will be the very next phase after we finish here with the human action phase. Now, again, in the human action phase, there's really 3 separate parts. One is movement of refugees. I'm going to take the 4 refugees in Tennessee and move them to Ohio. Again, they can move 2 states. So they move to Ohio. They're almost to Michigan next turn. These 2 refugees down here in South Carolina, we will move them to Virginia through North Carolina. Again, you can move 2 states. All right, now we need to decide, are we moving any of our military units? Now, I'm not going to move the infantry in North Carolina. Instead, I'm going to use one of the infantry special actions, which is powder keg placement. Powder keg, think of that as a bomb or a mine, if you will. And so one of the things the infantry can do is they can place one of those in their region on a die roll that is green. A green die roll, you'll place a powder keg in that state. A yellow die roll actually is really bad because you not only do you not get the powder keg, you destroy your infantry in the process. And a red is a no effect. So we're going to roll and hope for green. Red's not bad. Yellow is very bad. So green. So the infantry in North Carolina places a powder keg. This is the powder keg icon. We'll put that in North Carolina. And what that'll do is that if and when a tripod makes it to North Carolina, we'll get a free roll for damage on that tripod. What about our other units over here? Well, we're going to move the siege gun and the cavalry into Wisconsin. And then I'm actually going to leave those other units in Wisconsin so that next turn they can all move as a group. So instead, with the infantry that was already in Wisconsin, we'll also roll for a powder keg there. We get a yellow as luck would have it. Yellow is destroys infantry, so we lose this infantry marker. And that's it for the human action phase. There's nothing else to do there. So the next phase is the escape phase. It is the event card escape, the escape event. We'll turn that over and look at that. Looting. Remove one from the workforce of all regions with refugees. Well, we have 2 regions with refugees. We have this region here, Michigan. Their workforce was 10. We remove 1 down to 9. Again, it doesn't change the number of years this turn, but maybe next turn. And Virginia, their actual workforce value was 12, so we remove 1, that's down to 11. Not a good event card for us here in the escape phase. All right, the next part of the escape phase is to roll for fleeing refugees, but again, only if they are in a state with a harbor. None of our refugees are in a state with a harbor, so we will not roll for an fleeing action. Last thing is to do human victory points. Again, human victory points are the number of producing regions, and we're left with 9 again. So we go 1. Once we get to 10, we move the germ counter up 1. And back here, we've got 8 more, so we'll back up to 8. So we now have germ counter on 1, victory point counter on 8 for 18 total victory points for the human side. Again, there is another part to this phase, which is the cylinder placement. That only takes place the first time you hit 3, 6, or 9 with the germ counter. And we're not there yet. We're close, or getting closer, but not there yet. That is the end of the escape phase. The next event card will be a battle event card, so we won't see that until next turn. We now move down to the Martian action phase. First thing we're going to do is we're going to roll on the Martian movement or Martian action phase, and we've got the 3 at sea, we've got the 4 down here waves in Arkansas, and we've got the 2 waves in the Midwest. We'll roll for those at sea first. This is an automatic movement. The first wave, a red roll from returning at sea, puts the tripod in Mississippi. The next one, which is the wave 2 counter, is also red, so it also goes to Mississippi. And then the last one, which is a blue counter, gets a yellow, and a yellow goes to North Carolina. Now, here's where we're going to see that powder keg come into play. That powder keg, when a tripod moves into a region with a powder keg, you roll 1 die. A green result gives you 1 damage, a red or a yellow result gives 2 damage, and a red is no effect. And it does use up the powder keg. So we'll go ahead and roll. It's green. That's 1 damage. So that blue tripod is now damaged in turn to its damage size, and the powder keg goes away. So each tripod can take 2 damage, and so that one is half destroyed if you want to think of it that way. Now these 2 in Mississippi, those were the ones at sea. They've already moved this action phase, so they don't roll again. But we do have these other 4 down here in the Southwest, so we'll go with the 2 in Arkansas first. We'll start with the black one. We roll a green. It is red as the color of its region. And again, any green result during the Martian action phase is move. So we'll roll again. In Arkansas, a red result moves that tripod back to Texas. The other Arkansas tripod gets green, which is move. Green. Arkansas green moves that tripod to Mississippi with the other 3. Now we have these 2 tripods left over in Texas. First one is green and yellow. A Texas yellow moves this tripod out to sea. And then the last yellow tripod is also a move. A green result from Texas moves it to Arkansas. Okay, so that's where the southern tripods have moved to. We now have these 2 waves up here in Iowa to deal with. The number 1 wave tripod is a green, so it's a move. We roll again. A green result in Iowa. That tripod moves to Illinois. We have 1 more tripod. Green moves again. Red. In Iowa, red moves to Wisconsin. And look at that. We've got a bunch of military units in Wisconsin that we may have reason to deal with next turn. That's the end of the movement part of the Martian action phase. We now move to the victory point part of the Martian action phase. The first part of that is to deal with these two red destroyed counters to see if they move to red weed counters. We'll roll for Minnesota first. That's green, so it does not change. And down here in Texas, yellow, it does not change. There are no refugees in any state with tripods, nor are there refugees in any state in excess of the gear counters. So the only points will be those for the destroyed regions. And again, there are 2 points each, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4 points. That's the end of the Martian action phase. The Martian action phase, the Martians have 9 points. The humans now have 18. So we're starting to open up a little bit of a lead there. We move to the next phase, which is the assembly phase. And again, in this assembly phase, it only deals with cylinders. There are no cylinders on the map, and so that's the end of the assembly phase and the end of the turn. And so we move back to production phase.